thing about Only Child Tyrant is it's kind of like if rock music was made with synths. So a fair question I get asked a lot is where the sounds come from. And of course the answer is the pelts of snow leopards, but occasionally synths. So this is one of the ways I might make a sound for a Child Tyrant track. I'll start with a straight static sound with lots of potential for timbre animation, like from an oscillator like the Generate 3. Doesn't really matter what it's from, to be honest, but I will be making the sound in 2 layers though, so I'll use this QMMF4 as a real basic mixer, kind of a fancy option for such straightforward use, but for now it's and I'll put that through a compressor to kind of gel the sounds, the 2 layers together, and also to help the interplay between the 2 layers. I should point out that I'm not really trying to make a bass guitar sound. I want it to be a sort of weird hybrid, somewhere in between a distorted bass and a screaming synth. But anyway, I'll lock the sequence to Cubase using a MIDI to CV and take a gate out from the sequence to a mult. Now I can sync a LFO to the G3's timbre. I do want it all to be rhythmically related though to the sequence, so I'll clock divide that sync first before going back into the PHA. And now I can start sending animations to the odd and even harmonics, basically animating the sort of timbre in a kind of loop for rhythmic movement. And I can adjust the LFO behavior relative to the sync point. I can take a triggered out from the sequence, from the sequencer, and mult that to lock a different LFO with a different behavior. And the real key to all this is to sequence an animated sound source as opposed to a static one, and animated not just in terms of timbre but rhythm as well, and pitch, even quite radical pitch, sort of a moving target then. And what that'll give me is a sort of if I can lock those internal pitch movements and rhythms inside kind of like an outer shell of a sequence, then I can play those movements against each other. I'll show you what I mean a bit later with that. Now I can start to send pitch information from the sequencer, and it's a verbose, so it's a bit too much voltage, and I'll attenuate that before quantizing it and reducing the range further, and going from the quantizer then into the main pitch of the oscillator. Help if my cables were all the way in. That's better. Anyway, yeah, so now I can start to experiment with that interplay between the internal movements of the sound source against the sequence phrase, and it's kind of the beginning, at least, of getting things to sound like maybe a rapidly picked instrument, how that might behave, although obviously it doesn't sound anything like that now. In any case, yeah, before I get too carried away with sequencing, I'll roll up these weird looking sleeves and get into some tube processing. Now these are Metasonics tubes, which are sort of full of character and go a long way to giving this phrase the sound I want. RK2 in this case is giving me a sort of pinched, almost phase sound, which is interesting. I'll further shape this sound by dropping a more colourful filter in the signal chain between the tube and the mixer. In this case, a 1S multimode filter. What I love about this filter is it compresses the saturated signal in musical ways, particularly at high Q values. What I'd like to do now is draw out the attack stage of the sequence steps. Keep in mind that the notes in between, which are defined by modulation, stay as they are, right? So it's the accents that provide the sort of dynamics of a played instrument. And I'll pull back attenuation for the cutoff so it's not over pronounced. I have to pull it back a bit so it doesn't get into 303 territory, which is, due to the high resonance of the filter, can be fun, but not for this. So now I can go back to tweak the sequence, and what I'm looking for is kind of like a hammer sound on the bass string. I think that's what they call it when the fingers kind of fluttering on a fret. This sequencer does provide all kinds of other lovely options for string bends and other things too, but I think for this I'll just stick with the string, with the flutter for now. And lastly, I'll get into the second layer of the sound, so I'll take a fundamental from the oscillator and pass it through the RK3 tube this time. Kind of giving me a sub part of that sound, and I can kind of square it off so it's a mixture of sub and buzz. Don't really want this thing isolated, I just want it to poke through. Tone it down with a low pass, blend it back in with the original signal. I normally take a lot more time with all of this. In fact, all of these modules can do so much more than I'm doing with them. This is really straightforward patching for a sort of clear objective, I guess. Anyway, now I can have some fun with drum